It was the kind of day where the sun felt too hot, the pavement seemed to melt beneath your feet, and the whole world moved in a sluggish haze. The park was crowded with families enjoying the weekend, but there was one little boy standing alone under the shade of an old oak tree. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with dirt, and his eyes told a story of pain that his small body couldn't yet express. He watched wistfully as children ran past him with ice cream cones in hand, their laughter like music that echoed through the air. He didn't have one. He couldn't remember the last time he had something so simple, something that brought joy. His stomach growled, but he didn't move. The little boy simply stood there, his gaze fixed on the ice cream truck parked across the street. And then, as if the world had conspired to change the course of his life, a stranger appeared. A man in his late 30s, wearing a faded blue shirt and a soft smile, approached the boy. The man's voice was kind as he crouched down to the boy's level, looking into his eyes. "Would you like an ice cream?" he asked gently. What happened next would change both their lives forever. The stranger's name was Tom Harris. He was just a regular man, someone who lived a fairly ordinary life. Tom had a steady job as an office manager, a home he was proud of, and a small circle of friends. On the surface, it looked as though he had everything anyone could want. Yet beneath the surface, Tom carried the weight of his own struggles. Years ago, Tom had lost his wife to a car accident. The pain of that loss had almost swallowed him whole. For months, he couldn't even leave his house, burying himself in memories of the life they had shared. It wasn't until he had an unexpected moment of clarity, while sitting alone in a cafe, that Tom realized he had to do something. He couldn't keep living in the shadow of his grief. There was still goodness in the world. There were still people to help, still moments to cherish. He threw himself into charity work, volunteering at shelters and spending his free time helping others who were struggling. But despite all the good he did, something always felt missing. The hole in his heart was still there, and Tom couldn't quite fill it. He couldn't quite understand what was missing, but he knew deep down that there was a piece of his soul that yearned for connection. That yearning led him to the park that hot afternoon. He wasn't there for anything special, just a quiet stroll to clear his mind. But when he saw the boy, standing alone, with eyes that mirrored his own loneliness, something inside Tom stirred. Without thinking, he walked over to the boy. It wasn't just about the ice cream. It was something deeper, something that told Tom, this is the moment. This is the time for me to give again. The boy's name was Sam, and he had been standing in that park for over an hour. His mother had dropped him off earlier that day, promising to come back soon. But as the hours stretched on, his hope had begun to fade. His mother, as usual, had not returned. Sam had been living in foster care for as long as he could remember. His mother had been in and out of his life, struggling with addiction, unable to provide the stable home that a child needed. Sam had been shuffled from one foster home to the next, each one more painful than the last. He had learned early on not to expect much from the world. When Tom asked him if he wanted an ice cream, Sam's first instinct was to say no. He didn't trust people. People came and went, but there was something about Tom's eyes, kind eyes that held no judgment, that made Sam hesitate. For a moment, Sam simply stared at Tom, unsure of how to respond. The last time someone had given him something without expecting anything in return, it had been a foster parent who had promised to take care of him, but left just as quickly as they had arrived. Tom wasn't like those people. Sam could see that much. And yet, he was scared. What if this was just another trick? What if this man is going to leave me too? Sam's hand clenched into a fist at his side. He didn't know how to trust anymore. He didn't know if it was safe to hope. But then, as if reading Sam's mind, Tom smiled. He didn't push. He didn't demand an answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled dollar bill. He held it out to Sam and said softly, "I'll be right here when you're ready." No pressure. Sam's heart skipped a beat. The kindness was overwhelming. He took a deep breath, then finally nodded. "Okay," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Tom grinned and stood up. "I'll go get that ice cream for you then." The ice cream truck was a beacon of joy in a world that had often been harsh for Sam. He watched as Tom walked toward it, and a sense of warmth spread through his chest. He didn't know why this man cared so much, but in that moment, Sam didn't question it. Maybe he was wrong to expect nothing. Maybe, just maybe, this time, he could trust someone. When Tom returned with a chocolate cone in hand, Sam's eyes lit up. He had never been so happy to see a simple treat in his life. He took it from Tom with a trembling hand and took his first lick. The cool sweetness was a sensation he had nearly forgotten. He closed his eyes for a moment, savoring the taste, as if the ice cream could somehow fill the empty spaces in his heart. Tom sat next to him, keeping his distance, but there was a quiet companionship between them. The two of them, for the first time, shared a moment of peace in a world that had rarely offered it. "Thank you," Sam said, his voice small but filled with gratitude. "I didn't think anyone would care." Tom looked at him, and for a moment, his own heart broke. He thought of all the children he had seen grow up in foster care, children like Sam, who had been abandoned, neglected, and forgotten by the world. "I care," he said softly. "You matter." In that moment, something clicked in Tom's heart. He realized that the missing piece he had been searching for was right here in front of him. It wasn't just about giving. It was about connection. It was about showing someone that they weren't alone. Sam finished his ice cream in silence, but the bond between them had been forged. It wasn't just about the ice cream. It was about being seen, being cared for, and being loved, even in the smallest of ways. As the sun began to set, Tom knew it was time to leave. But he didn't want to say goodbye. He didn't want to leave Sam standing there, alone again, with the weight of the world on his shoulders. "Sam," Tom said, his voice firm but gentle, "I want to see you again. I can't promise anything, but I can promise this. You're not alone. You're not invisible." Tears welled in Sam's eyes, but he quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. He had spent so long hiding his emotions, locking them away, so he wouldn't get hurt. But Tom's words cracked something open in him. He felt hope for the first time in years. "I'll be here tomorrow," Sam said softly. "Will you come back?" Tom nodded. "I'll be here." And he was. The next day, and the next, Tom returned to the park, bringing Sam small gifts, books, toys, treats, and slowly, but surely, a bond formed between the two of them. Tom didn't just give ice cream. He gave Sam the one thing he had always longed for, a sense of worth, a belief that he was important, and a future that was full of possibilities. Weeks passed, and Tom's visits to the park became a regular part of Sam's life. Their bond deepened, and Tom began to see a side of Sam that had been hidden beneath years of pain and neglect. Sam laughed more often now, smiled more easily, and began to trust again. One day, as they sat on a bench, Sam looked up at Tom with wide eyes. "You know," he said, "I used to think no one cared. But you're different. You showed me that maybe there's more to life than being alone." Tom smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "You're not alone, Sam. You never will be again." And just like that, a friendship was born, one that would continue to grow, changing both their lives in ways they couldn't yet understand. Tom had found something in Sam that filled the emptiness inside of him. And Sam, for the first time in his life, knew that he had someone who would always show up, no matter what. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share it with others who need a reminder that kindness can change lives. Every small act of compassion, like sharing an ice cream with someone, can have a ripple effect that lasts a lifetime. Thank you for watching, and remember, we all have the power to make someone feel seen, cared for, and important. So, what will your act of kindness be today?